Have you ever wondered how Cain, one of the first sons of Adam and Eve, could have a wife? If they were the only human beings created by God, where did this mysterious woman come from? Today, we will explore this biblical enigma in depth, unveiling fascinating theories and discovering hidden truths. But before we start, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos full of mysteries and curiosities. Cain and Abel are introduced in the Bible as the first children of Adam and Eve, the progenitors of humanity. Cain, the firstborn, is described as a farmer, while Abel, the younger brother, was a shepherd. This duality between the brothers is central to the narrative, as it marks the beginning of human relationships and their conflicts. The two brothers presented offerings to God. Cain brought fruit from the ground, while Abel offered the best parts of his flock. However, God accepted only Abel's offering, which left Cain deeply hurt and furious. This rejection was the point of departure for the first great human drama: envy and jealousy between brothers. But why did God reject Cain's offering? This mystery has given rise to different interpretations over the centuries. Some believe that the problem was in the quality of the offering, while others point to an incorrect attitude in Cain's heart. Either way, what happened next would forever change the history of humanity. Want to know what happened next and how this all connects to the mystery of Cain's wife? Don't go away. Remember to like this video to help us bring you more content like this. And if you have any theories, comment below. Is the answer between the lines of the Bible, or is there something more hidden behind this story? Now, let us continue our journey to unravel this ancient enigma. Next topic: the rejected sacrifice and its consequences. Prepare to delve even deeper into the mind and deeds of Cain. The Bible narrates that, in a moment of devotion, Cain and Abel decided to offer sacrifices to God. Cain, a dedicated farmer, presented the fruit of his work, crops from the land. Abel, a sheep shepherd, offered the fattest parts of their best animals. Both were making a leap of faith, but what happened next would change everything. God accepted Abel's offering, but rejected Cain's. This apparently simple detail carries a great mystery. Why did God make this choice? Was Cain's offering inferior in quality, or was there something deeper involved, such as his intentions and the purity of your heart? The narrative does not offer a direct answer, but over the centuries, theologians and scholars have raised hypotheses. Some suggest that Abel offered the best of what he had, while Cain was negligent, offering something that did not represent his best dedication. Others argue that God would have rejected Cain's inner attitude, perhaps jealousy, pride, or lack of faith in his heart. The rejection, however, was not received in a humble manner. Cain let bitterness take over. His frustration quickly turned to anger, not only against Abel, but also against God. This anger was a reflection of the internal struggle he faced, unable to accept rejection and seek a path of reconciliation. God, sensing danger in Cain's heart, warned him, "Why are you angry? If you do what is right, you will not be accepted. But if you do not, sin is at the door. It wants to conquer you, but you must master it." This warning was a divine attempt to redirect Cain to the path of redemption. But unfortunately, Cain ignored this guidance, and it was rejection that began humanity's first act of violence. But how did it happen? What was the breaking point that led Cain to make the biggest mistake of his life? The Bible narrates that in a moment of devotion, Cain and Abel decided to offer sacrifices to God. Cain, a dedicated farmer, presented the fruit of his work, crops from the land. Abel, a sheep shepherd, offered the fattest parts of their best animals. Both were making a leap of faith, but what happened next would change everything. God accepted Abel's offering, but rejected Cain's. This apparently simple detail carries a great mystery. Why did God make this choice? Was Cain's offering inferior in quality, or was there something deeper involved, such as his intentions and the purity of your heart? The narrative does not offer a direct answer, but over the centuries, theologians and scholars have raised hypotheses. Some suggest that Abel offered the best of what he had, while Cain was negligent, offering something that did not represent his best dedication. Others argue that God would have rejected Cain's inner attitude, perhaps jealousy, pride, or lack of faith in his heart. The rejection, however, was not received humbly. Cain let bitterness take over. His frustration quickly turned to anger, not only against Abel, but also against God. This anger was a reflection of the internal struggle he faced, unable to accept rejection and seek a path of reconciliation. God, sensing danger in Cain's heart, warned him, "Why are you angry? If you do what is right, you will not be accepted. But if you do not, sin is at the door. It wants to conquer you, but you must master it." This warning was a divine attempt to redirect Cain to the path of redemption. But unfortunately, Cain ignored this guidance. This episode has been interpreted as a warning about the importance of intentions in our acts of faith. It is not just about what we offer, but how we offer it. The sacrifice of Cain and Abel illustrates that the human heart can be the true altar, and divine acceptance depends on our sincerity and devotion. Cain's resentment continued to grow. Divine rejection was not just a wound to his pride, but a catalyst for a wave of destructive emotions. One day, he called Abel out into the field, ostensibly to talk. But hidden in his words, there was a dark intention. What exactly was said between the two brothers before the final act? The Bible does not specify, but the scenario is clear. It was there that humanity's first homicide took place, an event that would forever mark the biblical narrative in human history. Driven by jealousy and anger, Cain took Abel's life. This was not just an act of physical violence, but a complete break in the fraternal bond and a reflection of Cain's separation from God. This moment represents human fragility in the face of sin and the devastating consequences of choices made in moments of lack of control. The first murder recorded in Scripture is not just a crime against Abel, but a direct affront against God and his creation. Abel's blood cried out from the earth as a testimony to what had happened. After the crime, God addresses Cain with a question that would echo for generations. "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain's response, full of coldness and disdain, was, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" This response reveals not only the attempt to hide the act, but also the denial of responsibility. God then sentences Cain, saying, "The blood of your brother cries out to me from the earth." This moment marks the introduction of a direct consequence for human actions, with Cain being cursed and condemned to wander the earth as a fugitive. In addition to the physical curse, Cain would bear the emotional weight of his nefarious choice. He would become a wanderer, alienated from God and other human beings. Cain's loneliness is a powerful symbol of the separation that sin can cause, both spiritually and emotionally. This episode is a profound reminder of the consequences of our actions and the importance of controlling our emotions. It challenges us to reflect on how we deal with our frustrations and to seek reconciliation rather than conflict. But even after this terrible crime, God shows mercy by protecting Cain with a special mark. What is the meaning of this mark, and what does it teach us about justice and divine compassion? Keep watching to find out. And remember, subscribe, join the channel, and share this video to spread this knowledge. After the terrible crime, God confronts Cain with words that resonate deeply. "The blood of your brother cries out to me from the earth." This divine judgment symbolizes not only justice, but also the revelation of the consequences of our choices. God did not need proof or witnesses, as creation already denounced the act. God declares that the earth, which had received Abel's blood, would refuse to give its strength to Cain. He would be cursed and condemned to wander as a fugitive. This sentence was not only physical, but also spiritual, marking a complete departure from the presence of God. Desperate, Cain cries out, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Anyone who finds me may kill me." God's response, however, is surprising. He places a mark on Cain, guaranteeing his protection against any mortal revenge. The Bible does not specify the exact nature of this mark. Some suggest it could be a visible physical sign, while others believe it was spiritual protection. Either way, the mark of Cain symbolizes something greater, the intersection of justice and mercy divine. Even after committing a terrible act, God chose to preserve his life, offering him the chance for reflection and redemption. The symbolism of the mark of Cain has been widely debated. It represents, at the same time, the consequence of sin and the grace of God. It shows that, even in the darkest moments, there is a glimmer of mercy. It invites us to reflect. How do we deal with our failures, and how do we respond to forgiveness when it is offered to us? Cain's curse separates him not only from his family, but also from any community. He becomes a wanderer, living on the margins of society and far from God. This exile is a reflection of the spiritual alienation caused by sin, a condition that resonates throughout humanity. But even in solitude, Cain demonstrates an incredible ability to adapt. He builds a city and leaves a legacy, showing that even under the weight of punishment, there is still the possibility of moving forward. God's punishment of Cain is a powerful reminder that our actions have consequences. However, the mark that protects him also shows that God does not abandon his creation, even in the midst of error. This duality between justice and mercy is one of the deeper themes of the biblical narrative. But what happened next? Who were the people Cain feared so much, and how did he find his wife? After being condemned to wander like a wanderer, Cain reveals his fear when he says, "Anyone who finds me will kill me." This statement raises an intriguing question. Who were these people he feared so much? After all, according to the biblical narrative, Cain and his family were the only human beings in existence. This question opens the door to several interpretations. One of them is that Cain feared other descendants of Adam and Eve, brothers, nephews, and relatives who might want revenge for Abel's death. But it would be possible that there were already other people besides Adam's immediate family and Eve. In response to Cain's fear, God places a special mark on him, saying, "If anyone kills Cain, he will suffer vengeance sevenfold." This statement not only ensures Cain's protection, but also demonstrates that God still has a plan for him, even after his terrible crime. This mark, of an unknown nature, symbolizes both divine justice and mercy. God not only punishes, but also protects, ensuring that Cain's story does not end with his premature death. But back to the question, who are the others that Cain mentioned? Some interpretations suggest that Adam and Eve could have had other children who were not explicitly mentioned in the biblical text until that moment. After all, Genesis, in chapter 5, mentions that they had other sons and daughters after the birth of Seth. This hypothesis also considers that families at that time were much larger, with extremely long lives, allowing for rapid population growth. Another, less conventional theory proposes that God could have created other human beings besides Adam and Eve. This would explain the presence of other people in the world during Cain's life. This interpretation seeks to harmonize the biblical narrative with archaeological and anthropological discoveries, which indicate the existence of human communities at the same time. However, it is important to highlight that this view is speculative and does not find explicit support in Scripture. The Bible focuses mainly on the history of Adam, Eve, and their direct lineage, leaving room for debate and theological interpretations. Regardless of the answers, the story of Cain and his fear teaches us about the complexity of the consequences of our actions and the way in which God, even in his justice, offers protection and opportunities for redemption. It also invites us to reflect on the way we face forgiveness and mercy, both from God and from ourselves. And now we come to the most intriguing question. Who was Cain's wife? How did she come to be? And what do we know about this mysterious union? Don't leave there, because in the next topic we will unravel this great mystery. Take the opportunity to like the video and subscribe on the channel to continue following our fascinating content. We come to the most intriguing point in Cain's story, his wife. Chapter 4 of Genesis mentions that, after being exiled, Cain found a woman and had a son named Enoch. But this raises a question. Who was this woman and where from did she come? The text does not offer many details, leaving room for a series of interpretations and theories that try to fill in the gaps in this narrative. The most common and widely accepted explanation among theologians is that Cain's wife was one of his sisters or a close relative. Chapter 5 of Genesis mentions that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters, which indicates a greater lineage than just Cain, Abel, and Seth. At that time, due to the need to populate the earth, marriage between close relatives was an acceptable practice, as the restrictions imposed later by the Mosaic Law did not yet exist. Furthermore, people lived extremely long lives, which facilitated growth population. Another, less conventional theory suggests that God could have created other human groups besides Adam and Eve. This view attempts to reconcile the biblical narrative with archaeological evidence, which points to the existence of several early human communities at the same time. However, it is important to remember that this theory is speculative and does not find direct support in Scripture. It appears as an attempt to explain the rapid population expansion mentioned in the Bible. Regardless of who Cain's wife was, their union marks the beginning of a new phase in human history. The building of a family and the birth of Enoch represent a rebirth, even under the weight of curse and exile. The Bible, in telling this story, seems to focus more on the symbolism of the beginning of a new lineage than on the biological or historical details of how this union came about. The issue of Cain's wife teaches us something greater: the importance of interpreting biblical texts with faith and humility, recognizing that not all details are revealed. Often, the silence of the Bible in certain aspects invites us to seek the spiritual essence behind the narrative. Cain's story does not end with his mark and exile. Despite his status as a wanderer, he builds a city and names it in honor of his son, Enoch. This decision to build a city is surprising, considering his curse and the fact of being destined to roam the earth. But why would someone cursed as a fugitive build a city? This attitude reflects a search for redemption, or perhaps an attempt to establish a new beginning, even in the face of adversity. The city of Enoch is not just a physical landmark, but a symbol of overcoming. It represents the human effort to move forward, even under the weight of sin and divine punishment. Cain, by naming the city in honor of his son, appears to seek a positive legacy to offset its history marked by tragedy. This building is also a powerful message about the human capacity to create something meaningful, even in adverse conditions. It reflects Cain's determination to rebuild his life and form a new community. But how did Cain manage to build a city? This point raises new questions about who helped in this endeavor. Some interpretations suggest that he was helped by his descendants and by other possible humans existing at the time, based on theories about the existence of human communities parallel to the lineage of Adam and Eve. These interpretations, although speculative, help fill in the gaps in the biblical narrative and explain how a single man could establish something as significant as a city. The founding of the city of Enoch can also be seen as a milestone in the transition from nomadic to sedentary life. Biblically, it symbolizes the beginning of social organization, the building of communities, and the creation of bonds between individuals, even under difficult circumstances. This story shows us that, even when separated from God, human beings have an innate capacity to create, innovate, and adapt, seeking a greater purpose. The city of Enoch is a key piece in the narrative of Genesis, symbolizing the lasting impact of Cain's choices. Even marked and exiled, he leaves a legacy that endures, highlighting that human beings, even amid the consequences of their mistakes, can still find ways to rebuild and move forward. But do this city and its inhabitants offer clues about the existence of other humans beyond the lineage of Adam and Eve? In the next topic, we will explore the most fascinating theories about who could have coexisted with Cain and how this impacts the biblical narrative. Don't miss it. Take the opportunity to like the video and leave your opinion in the comments. What do you think the city of Enoch represents? The Bible mentions that Cain feared being killed by other human beings after his exile. This statement raises a great mystery. Who were these people? If, according to the sacred text, Adam, Eve, and their descendants were the only humans created by God, how could there be others? To answer this question, several interpretations have emerged. each attempting to fill in the gaps in the biblical narrative. The most straightforward explanation is that the others were Adam and Eve's own descendants. Since Genesis mentions that they had other sons and daughters, it is possible that these descendants, over generations, formed independent groups, increasing the human population rapidly. In that period, human longevity allowed many generations to coexist. Cain might rightly fear his more distant relatives, who might seek revenge for Abel's death. Another theory speculates that God created other humans besides Adam and Eve, but that they were not directly mentioned in the biblical narrative. This hypothesis seeks to harmonize the sacred text with scientific discoveries that indicate the existence of human communities at the same time. This idea, while intriguing, is widely debated. While some believe it solves the mystery of rapid population expansion, others argue that it contradicts the biblical family-centered narrative of Adam and Eve. For many scholars, the absence of detail in the biblical text is not an error, but rather an invitation to spiritual reflection. The focus of the Bible is on the relationship between God and humanity, not on providing a detailed account of historical or scientific events. These questions teach us that biblical interpretation can vary according to the cultural and spiritual context of each reader, and that the most important thing is to understand the central message. Humanity is called to live in harmony with God and with others. Regardless of who the others were, the impact of this part of the story reinforces the complexity of the human experience: fear, guilt, and the search for protection and redemption. The mark of Cain not only separates him, but also connects him to the rest of humanity, showing that we are all interconnected in our stories of error and learning. And what about the impact of these interpretations on the future of the biblical narrative? In the next topic, we will explore how these questions influence the vision of the lineages of Adam and Eve and the divine plan for humanity. Stay with us, subscribe to the channel, and share this video so more people can join this fascinating discussion. After Cain's exile, the biblical narrative continues to detail the lineage of Adam and Eve, highlighting the birth of Seth, another son mentioned explicitly in Genesis. Seth is presented as the spiritual successor of Abel, and his lineage is widely considered the continuation of the divine promise. According to Genesis, Adam lived 800 years after the birth of Seth and had other sons and daughters. This reinforces the idea that his descendants grew significantly over time, forming the basis of the human population mentioned in the Bible. Cain, on the other hand, also left a lineage. His son, Enoch, gave his name to the city he built. This lineage is described in Genesis chapter 4, culminating in Lamech, a man known for having 2 wives and for his statement's enigmatic stories about revenge and violence. Cain's lineage highlights not only population expansion, but also the growth of human achievements. Advances in the creation of tools, music, and community life are mentioned. However, this lineage also bears marks of conflict and distance from God. An interesting contrast in the biblical narrative is the development of the lineages of Cain and Seth. While the lineage of Cain appears to focus on material conquest and expansion, the lineage of Seth emphasizes spiritual continuity, eventually leading to the birth of Noah and the story of the flood. This duality can be interpreted as a reflection of the constant struggle between following God's paths or following one's own path, often marked by conflicts and challenges. A notable feature of this era is the extraordinary longevity of people. Adam, for example, lived 930 years, while other biblical characters in this genealogical line also lived extremely long lives. This allowed rapid population growth and the creation of more complex communities. Despite the challenges and tragedies, the biblical narrative makes clear that God had a plan for humanity. Seth's lineage is a constant reminder that even in the midst of sin and alienation, there is a promise of redemption and an invitation for reconciliation with the Creator. In the next topic, we will explore the phenomenon of longevity in Scripture. Why did the first humans live so long? And what does this mean for God's plan? Don't miss out. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the bell to continue following our journey through biblical history. A striking characteristic of the first biblical generations is their extraordinary longevity. Adam lived 930 years, Seth 912, and Methuselah, the longest-lived man mentioned in the Bible, reached 969 years. But why did these people live so long? And what does this mean in the context of the divine plan? These long lives raise numerous questions and theories, both spiritual and scientific, that attempt to explain this unique phenomenon. A common interpretation suggests that longevity was God's way of allowing spiritual knowledge and traditions to be passed directly from generation to generation. With such long lives, figures like Adam and Noah had the opportunity to witness and influence multiple generations. It also reinforces the role of the patriarchs as pillars of faith and wisdom in their communities, establishing a lasting legacy that would shape human history. Scene: Adam and Eve being expelled from the Garden of Eden, followed by images of descendants with shorter lives throughout the generations. Another explanation is linked to the fall of man. After original sin, corruption and departure from God began to impact creation. Later generations faced environmental, physical, and spiritual challenges that resulted in progressively shorter lives. The flood is an important milestone in this transition. After this event, human longevity decreased significantly, with Abraham living only 175 years and Moses 120, as recorded in the Bible. From a scientific point of view, some theories suggest that Earth's environmental conditions before the flood could have favored longevity. Factors such as air and water quality and less exposure to disease could have contributed to longer lives. Other scholars see longevity as a symbolic element. For them, the high numbers may represent the greatness of the patriarchs or the depth of their impact on the biblical narrative, more than a literal measure of time. Whether literal or symbolic, longevity in the Bible teaches us about God's patience and purpose. It reflects divine care in shaping humanity over time and reminds us that each generation has a unique role in fulfilling the greater plan of God. The story of longevity invites us to reflect on what we do with the time we have. While our lives today are shorter, the impact we can make is eternal. Just like the patriarchs, we are called to live with purpose and leave a legacy that inspires future generations. And so we conclude our journey through the story of Cain, his wife, and the mysteries of the first human generations. I hope this video has illuminated some of the most fascinating enigmas in the Bible. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to continue exploring these incredible topics with us. And now, click on one of the videos suggested on the screen to continue learning.